What's better for growing your glutes, squats or hip thrusts? When you break down what the science says, there's a negligible difference between the results you get from squatting and hip thrusts. But does that carry over to everyone? And what do you need to know? When you're squatting, you'll also be significantly training your quads, your adductors, and even your erectors that run up your spine. And depending on your anatomy and your squat setup, you might be training your quads way harder than your glutes, or your glutes and erectors way harder than your quads. As a general rule of thumb, if your squat looks a little bit more tipped over, there's a bigger change in the hip angle than there is in the knee angle, you're probably hitting your glutes harder. If your squat is more upright and there's a bigger change in your knee angle compared to your hip angle, then you're probably training your quads harder. However, when we're doing hip thrust variations and your setup and execution is on point, you're mainly only going to be training your glutes. Also, when we break down what's actually happening to the glutes in the movements, you'll see that they both have their distinct benefits. At the bottom of a squat, there's a lot of tension when your glute is lengthening out or stretching, and vice versa. At the top of a hip thrust, the glute will be shortening or squeezing it together. But aside from what the science says, when we look at the real world and on the gym floor, getting really strong at hip extension is good for you regardless of your gender. It'll probably make your girlfriend happier. Some of the powerlifting crowd will argue that squats and deadlifts are all you need to grow a bigger set of glutes, but I don't think that takes into account that if all your volume for your glutes is allocated towards those two movements, some people just don't want a huge upper back and traps. That usually comes as a byproduct. So what I personally recommend to my clients that want to grow their glutes more is to use both across either the week or the training cycle. If you really want to take it a few steps further, you're going to want to include some form of hip abduction where you're moving your leg away from the midline of your body, and some form of single leg work, whether it's a lunge, a split squat, or a step up, for example. If you're not sure what movements you can do for these categories, you can send me a message.